This is the Self-Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Myers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self-Storage Podcast. I am your host, Scott Myers, and this week's guest is Alex Erbs. Alex co-founded Erbs Management Group in 2020, and he serves as the president, managing the day-to-day operations and continual business development. That sucks. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self-Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Myers, and this week's guest is Alex Erbs. Alex co-founded Erbs Management Group in 2020, and he serves as the president, managing the day-to-day operations and continual business development. Erbs Management Group is a family-owned and operating company with years of experience in owning, managing, acquiring, and developing storage facilities across the Midwest, specifically in secondary and tertiary markets. Erbs Management Group has 26 facilities under management in 5 different states, and in the coming years, Erbs Management is looking to expand their hybrid style of third-party management by at least doubling the size of their portfolio and continuing to assist their owners in expanding and developing their current assets. So without further ado, please enjoy my wide-ranging conversation on all things self-storage management with Alex Erbs. Hey, Alex, good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Scott, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. I gave everybody a little bit of background on yourself and somewhat of your history in the industry, and your name has been thrown around a lot. It's come up by several of our mastermind members, some of our students, and then also some of the brokers as to a go-to source for operating, managing, and not just managing, but really driving the performance of smaller facilities in markets where, some of the folks that we're used to using and the names that people are used to seeing aren't going. And so I wanted to share you being seen as a valuable resource in the industry with some of our folks. So if you would, fill in some of the gap on your history and the background that I've already shared with folks, and let us know how you get into the industry and how you get into the management side of it.
Thank you again. I appreciate you having me on here. And yeah, so a little bit about us. I started back in 2014 or so working with my uncle. He owns a chain of facilities up in upstate New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, those kind of Northeast markets. Ended up, helping him with websites, marketing, some operational stuff, getting some newer software in place at the time. And we got the opportunity between my dad and I to purchase a facility, about a 20,000 square foot, 160 unit facility near our house in the St. Louis area. It's kind of our first foray into storage and even just really into any kind of rental property or investment property. It was going pretty well. And pretty much a few months after that, we got approached by another owner who had 3 facilities nearby and asked us if we were interested in purchasing. We ended up buying those. And then we had another one approach us right after that for a 5th facility. So we ended up buying about 5 facilities in less than a year, about a little over 100,000 square feet in total, all in the St. Louis area. It went really well, kind of really got to get our operations and systems and processes in place. We ended up expanding on a couple of those facilities, adding more units, doing your normal stuff you would do over, a few years. And we had 2 managers running all 5 locations, so it's kind of a hub and spoke model, as we, a lot of people talk about that, one centralized office. In this case, it was 2, just because of how it worked out, 2 centralized offices that ran all the locations. We got approached by, a lot of the people you just mentioned previously in regards to brokers, investors, other owners, et cetera, kind of saying, hey, would you guys have any interest in scaling your model for these, maybe secondary markets, smaller facilities, these places that these big management companies won't go to? And so this was a late 2019 conversation. And I said, well, if there's a need for it, we'd be happy to start looking into it. And, it kind of, we didn't come in with some giant master plan and some big, here's our 10-year goal, et cetera. It was more of really a need to assist other owners and other vendors in the industry. And, we'll see if it works. And so we took over a couple facilities to start of other people's. We started, growing our own operations, and it kind of snowballed into, I think there was really a need. And so long story short, we're here, just a couple of years later, and we went from our little 5 facilities with a couple managers to 26 facilities in 5 states with 10, 12 employees, something like that, to trying to get more employees, which is a problem right now, but, continuing to try and get employees and, just growing rapidly and not stopping anytime soon. So that's kind of the really quick and dirty answer right there. So.
Well, one of the challenges is that, as you touched on, and I wanted to take a little deeper dive on this call, as you know, Alex, is that we run across as investors to, crank up our marketing. We're running across a lot of opportunities, sellers, the mom and pops that have small facilities, and standard in the industry to get through bank underwriting is to put a 5% management fee in place. Well, if you put that 5% fee in place on top of the income that a facility brings in, well, that figure is, sometimes below $1,000 or a small enough amount that a third-party property management company typically isn't going to be able to touch it. So either you're over payrolled or your management, expense, the management burden is really high on a facility, which cuts into your profitability, or you suck it up and you manage it yourself, or you try to figure out some way of making it an unmanned facility and reducing the payroll cost or management cost, altogether, or you just pass on a facility, which is what many of our folks that are, our mastermind members and our students that come through our academy, they find themselves saying is that, well, it's great, but it's either in my hometown and I got a full-time job and I still can't manage it, or it's in another state. I'd like to buy this asset, but there's no way I'm going to be able to manage it, especially if I have to let a manager go and try to replace that person and then train them again. Or even if it's unmanned, I still have to be my own regional manager or area manager and go over and keep an eye on the facility and do the things that need to be done. So it sounds like you found a formula at the very least for making this work, where the numbers work and it's profitable, not only for you, but then for investors. It's not too much of an expense burden. So I'm not asking you for numbers to, what is your monthly cost for this, but I'm more interested in your approach. So if somebody contacts you and they've got a smaller facility and, and that's what these are the decisions that they're faced with, how do you approach this with them to say, well, we could do it this way, or it's a la carte, or, it needs to be unmanned. And do you have the ability of doing so? Just kind of walk us through what that process may look like when somebody contacts you and they've got a smaller facility. How do you solve this management challenge for them?
Well, you already did a great job there because you basically helped me with all my sales pitch cues there, all the different little things that we say. I mean, management's not particularly for everyone, but in a lot of cases, it can really assist a lot of facilities, especially when it comes down to some of the points you just made. Is maybe it's not so much can't run this facility as I don't have the time. What are my core competencies to this? Maybe I am working a full-time job and don't have the time to do this, or just don't want to worry about the staffing of it, because then as soon as somebody quits in today's market, it's not easy to refill that. So who's replacing that? So that's kind of where we wanted to, that void there, is that we have a few different ways that we handle this. So yeah, we usually are around, 5-6% of the gross income, where it's pretty normal for management groups. We also like to do a kind of hybrid management model that can really apply to any type of market you're in. It may be a larger, mid-size secondary market, or even sometimes larger cities in the Midwest here, or it can go down to as small as you can think of in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. There's a lot of different ways. So we like to take kind of a hybrid approach with our managers and kind of call it like a co-op model, where we'll get one manager who ends up handling a certain number of units. And that certain number of units might be between, at one location, because it's just that large of a location, or it may be between 3 or 4 locations. So we're handling a lot of remote operations. We're handling a lot of, basically, in any sense here, all of our facilities could be ran automated without somebody there. And any new, any facility we bring on, you can have an employee working there, or if they happen to up and quit or they leave, we still have other call center type models in-house that we use. We have other on-site contacts that we use. We have other different ways that, it's really tough for even your small operators to do on their own. That's where we found that our business was a need in a lot of these different markets, that we can take this and help other owners scale, maybe quicker than they could on their own, and make sure we're doing it in a lean fashion where they can still afford management and get the same great service that you'd find with a large management company, but not really at the same price. So sometimes I feel like we're undercutting ourselves, if you really want to say it there. But I think there's just a lot of great need out there. And we discussed this before, Scott, is some of these deals come to the table and it's like, we want to buy this, the numbers look great, but we don't know how to operate it well. And not even operate it well, but operate it efficiently and not put all the burden on the owner's shoulders. So that's where we like to be able to take some of this risk in some sense with purchasing facilities, and we're spreading it out amongst all the owners in our network here is we have different employees that work for each other. We have a different internal network. They can contact me. Any owners can contact me with their issues. They have district managers they can talk to. They can talk to their property managers. So it's a very symbiotic relationship between all of our shareholders within this facility, within this company, et cetera, that makes it worth having management in these scenarios that you previously didn't have management options for. So that's where we like to be able to fine tune and find that tailored solution that works best for that specific facility, but also works specifically for that ownership group too. So just going back to one of your questions in regards to the options out there, we have some that we just provide some of the staffing and the labor for, just to help with, calls, new rentals, et cetera. We have some that we do the complete management package for. We'll do even everything down to bookkeeping and other, basically give us I do it, give me the keys and I'll give you a report at the end of the month. So we have, but other times I have actually one of our facilities I can think of right now is the manager just didn't want to deal with all the day-to-day stuff, but he loves maintenance. So he's actually our on-site contact doing our maintenance work and doing our stuff there. He just doesn't want to deal with the people. And I was like, that's even best case, because no one's going to care for that property more than the owner in that situation. So, so it just very much depends on what, each scenario and what's going to be the best situation to make sure this facility runs as best as possible here.
So one of the benefits of going with a property management company and or the larger ones, even the REITs that we bring in to manage our facilities, is that you do get some economies of scale from a large company. Probably the primary being the marketing of the facility, because they have a website that has already got a lot of traffic coming to it. It doesn't always show up, and it isn't always prevalent in that market. But having a website that you're just added on to as another node, another click for a location, there's a lot of benefit in that. The downside that we've looked at in some of our smaller facilities is that makes it inflexible for us as the investor to then move away, whether we're selling it. Sometimes the buyer will say, well, I don't want them to manage my facility. And so now I'm dead in the water. I'm starting from scratch from a marketing standpoint because I'm not taking over this domain. Or if we want to, as owners, we want to switch, management companies, and then we lose all of that because all that traffic and all the, the Google mojo goes back to that company because we never built out our own site and our own traffic and our own presence. So tell me a little bit about, how you approach that conversation with owners. Is there flexibility? Can they be on, do you have a main site? Do you recommend that? Can they have their own site? Do you do two websites and dual marketing? Tell us the benefit of working with you on that standpoint, and then also speak to the flexibility that an owner may have just in case they decide to go elsewhere at some point or self-manage again, go back to the way things were.
That's a great question. And we get this question a lot, especially in regards to, I think the biggest question we get a lot of even off the bat is, should we rebrand the facility? Do we need to change the name? And that's not always an easy conversation. A lot of times, especially with these existing properties, when you're looking into purchasing them, it's kind of like you got to look at its history. Does it have a pretty good history in the market? Or is the name, synonymous with bad issues? Or just with issues in general. So that's one of the first things we always look at is we don't have a specific brand name that we use. A lot of times, a lot of our owners have made the decision previously to say, hey, we want to make it either a localized name, St. Louis Storage, or some, whatever name. I'm just thinking of St. Louis because that's where I'm at right now. But, whatever name, trying to make it local, trying to make it worth when you're searching for these storage facilities, you can find it quicker than most options. So we try and make it a localized name a lot of times. They will have an individualized website, but it will be linked back to our main management page so that we can continue with our SEO or search engine optimization to be able to see that it's with a broader network and chain. Now, with speaking with some of our marketing and SEO experts, we're looking into other options as we may have we're probably going to be moving to a pretty centralized website soon just to help with the amount of clicks and flow of traffic going to certain web pages. But the owners are still going to be able to keep their domains and have their domains in place so that, God forbid they aren't happy with our services or something happens, they still have their domain that people are being linked to and backlinking stuff like that. So I'm not going to get on this call or on this podcast and say I'm a marketing expert of any kind, that I'm just some big digital marketing expert. I have enough knowledge to be dangerous. That's kind of what I always say here to make some strides. But especially compared to a lot of our, the bigger counterparts in the industry that have these big marketing and huge websites, it truly depends on the markets that you're in. Because a lot of times where we try and say is, a lot of the markets that we work in, secondary, tertiary markets, we don't need to have a giant, $2,000-$3,000 a month budget just on pay-per-click and web pages, et cetera. So I think that's where some of these smaller management companies like ourselves and other great companies that are out there is they need to be able to streamline to what needs to be had in the market. Like there's a couple facilities I can think of is we manage 2 out of 3 of the facilities in the whole town. And the next competitor is literally, I think 10 miles away is what it is. So we don't need to be spending thousands of dollars a month on advertising. But then in the next side of it is we manage a facility in Columbia, Missouri, which competes against your large REITs and larger institutional players like Storage Mart and some other bigger companies where we have to be able to compete against those. And so we have to put some more money into our websites, into our pay-per-clicks, into our SEO, and being able to compete with these larger brands. So I think that's where it's going to be a little bit where I always like to put it back on the owner as to what is, or be able to share our experience with our owner to be able to say, is there really a need to have XYZ this much marketing? I do believe in the power of marketing. I do think it's really important to have a great, very dynamic website because we do a ton of online move-ins and a ton of very automated and digital processes here. But it's also being cognizant of how much you're spending and is it worth the return in the market that you're in? And that's something that I think an owner needs to think about before they choose any kind of management group is making sure that they're realizing where their efforts and where their expenses are going towards. Because when we say we run a lean operation, we want to be sure is, we're doing all the same things big operators do. Do we need to have a large budget like this when we're already 95% full for the most part? Probably not, but we can put it towards some other things like dynamic pricing and other pricing models that can make sure that we are continuing to stay at high occupancy at the highest rates in your market without having the giant cost burden behind it.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other strategies that we talked about, Alex, is that, or not necessarily a strategy, but one of the avenues that many of our folks are taking, and as investors, if we're looking at a whole bunch of facilities, like let's say when folks come to our mastermind, and there's a large amount of deal flow that comes through there at our quarterly events and on an ongoing basis. And we may get to the end of 2 days after, a whole bunch of folks have seen a lot of deals that are smaller and maybe in fragmented markets, but somewhat close. And then all of a sudden they recognize, well, if I bought all, 3, 5, 7, 10 of these and found a way to centrally manage them and spread that cost, from a marketing standpoint, brand them all the same, name them all the same, one domain, and then, seek a company like yours to be able to manage them and get hopefully some economies of scale on the management end as well. It may make sense in the underwriting now. All of a sudden, the 5% expense burden for management is not necessarily 5%, and it makes sense to be able to take these down. Is that a viable option? And, I see that as a way for people to be able to utilize you and your company, as well as others out there like you, although there aren't many, maybe not a unicorn, but very rare, which is why I wanted to have you on this podcast to talk about this.
So we shouldn't be on the podcast. We shouldn't be talking about it. It's what you're saying here is we need to cut it off right here.
We may be giving away the secrets. And so tell me, do people approach you with that? And is that, literally that's what you've done. If we could kind of plot, what you've done, you found these opportunities in these markets and you said, yeah, I'm going to centrally manage it, but I'm not going to hire a company. We're going to do it. We built it. And then you recognize that, that's how great businesses are built, is because you had a need first, and then you recognize that other people did as well. So long-winded way of leading into the question, are people utilizing you for that, where all of a sudden they have a gaggle or have the ability to take down a number of properties and then they approach you?
I will just say this is how our company was founded. That's how my dad and I were founded. Is we personally own, I'm going to use an example because I can give specifics because it's our facilities, is we own 3 facilities, or we bought a portfolio in Belleville, Illinois. They are all within a 5-mile radius of each other. It's about, at the time, it was only about 350 units. Now we're up to about 600 units, and we have one manager who handles all 600 units and does a lot of that. This just is work for us. We actually also used to run U-Haul out of there. We also do a lot of stuff out of that facility that, the hub and spoke model, I think we had mentioned a little bit ago, is just that's where our company was founded on, is, hey, we buy a facility, we get one nice centralized facility there. And if I can make it that efficient number of units between, hey, we're taking over 600 to 800 units in a market, that's usually where you're going to be at the most efficient, and having one full-time manager and being able to run a lot of that stuff and be truly efficient in getting the stuff done. So I've actually, here's another secret. Here's another trade secret that I give to all of my clients. As soon as they purchase a facility in the market, I tell all my clients, and I personally do this too, call every facility in your market, call the other 5 facilities in your market there. And don't secret shop. Be straightforward with them. Because if you can know your competition there, and also just talk with them, we bought a facility, and I just, I called them myself, and I'd say, hey, my name's Alex. We just purchased XYZ facility down the road. I just want to introduce myself. We also have a management company. We have other facilities. I don't know if you've ever been interested in looking at management options, or you're looking at, possibly selling in the future, or other things. I just hope you can keep my information around. And honestly, if we don't have any units, I would love to refer people to you, or vice versa. And you just have a real conversation with them. You tell them what's going on. And a lot of my clients have been very successful with that. Is, oh, Alex, I got a great lead here. I got a great lead here. So now this little 150, 200 unit facility in the central Illinois becomes a great benefit, because now it's, hey, if I can now add on another 200 units here and 200 units here, I got 600 units. I got a nice portfolio. We have a management group like Erbs Management Group that can come in and is used to managing multiple locations and little annex locations. It's kind of like we call them a lot of times, these secondary locations, but we run them out of a centralized domain. We rebrand them all the same name. We have the same systems and processes. It's now just scaling that and putting that into place. So I'm thinking of right now, actually, one of my clients who went to the Storage Academy, did all the stuff there, and she had her one little facility and she was happy with it. And we were able to kind of talk to her as one of the neighboring facilities was going up for sale soon. And I talked to her about it as like, hey, you understand your economies of scale can be truly maximized. And she's like, oh, that might make some sense, but would you be willing to manage that? And for us, if we can get more units and give more opportunities to both our owners and the tenants, that, hey, we're almost 100% full here and I have nothing to give, and we're already at the highest market rates. If I can go buy a neighboring facility that's way below market rates and truly dragging down the market, and you bring that into our management network, that's like best case scenario for a management group and for, the owner in this case is. So yes, very detailed there, but yes, we love those systems and processes here. We're doing another one that we're taking over management of a facility where we already have the neighboring facility 2 miles down the road. So it's like, now we're going to again have 800 units in one market here. That's where you get these economies of scale that maybe some of these larger companies have the economies of scale from the marketing perspective or other perspectives like that, but we're having in the efficiency of what our payroll's like, what our on-site contacts are doing, what truly our marketing is in regards to, hey, if I don't have my option here, I have more options right next door. So yeah, those are my favorite to say the least, as you can hear there. So.
Well, and you're taking a page literally right out of our home study system, where we tell people, a lot of our marketing is pull marketing. So we push marketing out there until we buy a facility, at least we have in the past. And then once we do that, then we pull in the rest of the competitors, and just, you're again reading out of our book, Alex, and that is, we don't walk in and pretend like we're mystery shopping, and we go in there with a purpose, which our purpose is to say, hey, we're new in the market. We bought a facility down the road. Love to be able to partner with you. If we're out of a certain size unit, we'd like to send them your way, and, vice versa. And, oh, by the way, we're looking to grow. Do you know of any the competitors in the market that may be interested in selling? And approach it that way first, and then ask them if they may be interested in selling as well. And same thing, leave our contact information and stay in touch with them. Hopefully refer clients back and forth if we can, and then leave that door open for a future acquisition. And so I think that is, 100% the best way to go out and grow your portfolio is through that strategy. But I want to shift gears now. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, I think there's this false narrative, especially some older operational stuff of like, oh, you shouldn't talk, competition, your enemies down the street. And I kind of just laugh. I'm like, at least for us, I'm like, I love referring to our, if we don't have what the customer has, I want to find the customer the best situation here. So, we're going to try and exhaust every option we have to keep them with us, but we'll go and refer them to our competition down the street. And I want to know who the good competition is, because when you're doing your market analysis and your deep dives, you should know what your competition's doing. So if you can find a like-kinded product and you're able to help them, we're friends with a lot of our competitors down the street. I mean, it really is. And it's like, So this whole competition thing, it shouldn't be a competition, is work together to find the best solution here. And usually that whole market's going to thrive if that happens.
Yep. Well, competition is competition. I think it gets a bad rap. Whatever, they're competitors, but they're friendly competition up until the point where they're not. And it's always interesting that, as we take that approach, when we come in and our district managers or the managers at the site will go out to the rest of the facilities and introduce themselves. That is the conversation that they have. Let's help each other because we're in a service environment. We are in a service business, and it is the trauma and transition business. And when people need storage, it's because of trauma and transition, and sometimes both. And so we're just there to serve our customers the best and send them over somewhere if we can. And what I find over and over again, Alex, is that in some of these markets we'll go into where there's one person who doesn't want to play nicely, and refer back because they do view the competition as adversarial. Then when the rest of the folks are all sharing leads and that person isn't, guess who has the lowest occupancy? and the inability to raise rates. And that's just natural selection. That's just that what occurs. And so it never pays to do that. It always surprises me, but doesn't shock me, put it that way.
They know better than you, Scott. You haven't been doing it long enough, so they know better than you. And there's, they don't need to share any knowledge or anything. So there you go.
Yep. Of course. So Alex, there's a difference between managing a facility, truly just managing it, making sure that the lights are on, the doors are open at the time that's supposed to, the marketing's on, somebody's answering the phone and driving the performance. And, nobody is going to manage your facility as well as you or care 1% as much about it as you mentioned, from the maintenance standpoint, from the one owner. But the same thing with the numbers. I mean, when your hand's really close to the till and it's your money in the till, you're going to drive that performance a little more. And when we give up management control, we don't expect that to be the case. But again, that's the reason why we want to have you on this podcast, is because we've seen where you've been pulled into many facilities for turnaround, poor performing facility, or to lift the performance as somebody's getting ready for a sale to maximize the value. So maybe for the folks that are new, let's take a step back and let's talk about the difference, and taking maybe yourself out of the equation, but speak to the standpoint of a management company. The difference between, when you've come in and maybe replace a management company, and then what it truly takes and what people should be looking for in a management company like yourself that is going to perform. And, what does that look like? Do you have performance incentives that you put in place? And do you believe in that? Or, how do you truly get your folks to be able to perform, and what drives you to be able to maximize the value, meaning the net operating income of a facility?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, because we get approached with this all the time. It's even something that I continue to do some, self-reflection on, is when you walk in with owners, and it's not as blunt as this, but I always call it the approach of, hey, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you. I can manage it better than you are. And, the mom and pop are like, whoa, wait a second. Like, who are you, guy that came off the street? And, I make my money each month. It's fine. I'm 100% full and I'm proud of it. That's all, so it's like, there's no reason I need to change anything. Why would I go with a management company here? Or even just, why would I go with the management company? Or why do you think you can do it better than us? And, I don't think that there is definitely some wrong ways to do storage, but there's a lot of ways to get to different goals here. And so for us, our goal is we treat every facility like it's our own facility. And I know that's kind of a cliche answer. That's what everyone's expecting to do here. But something I'm really proud of saying is, you can go to our website, which I'll plug at the end of the show here. You can go to our website, you can pick any facility on the map there, and I'd happily give you the owner's phone number, and they're only going to give you raving reviews. That's why we aren't trying to grow too large into too big of a company. We're not trying to grow, we'll just take on whatever, wherever. We want to be able to be centralized enough that our performance is really pushing the performance of the property. So going back to your point of, when you're looking for a management group, I think you need to ask, some really deep questions. Is, really the first one could be, what are you going to do differently that I couldn't do as an owner operator here? My answer would be, well, we have a larger team behind us. So we have district managers, we have that hold accountability to all of our employees here, performance incentives, and making sure, hey, we're hitting all of these different marks, in regards to how many units are we renting? Are we getting our delinquency down? Is our property clean, performing when we do our checks? I mean, there's a whole list of just auditing and details like that, where it's, hey, even down to, are we collecting the right documentation when we're doing move-ins? In today's technology, there's so much in regards to online move-ins, a lot of contactless stuff, and that's where our auditing team comes in and makes sure, are we collecting all these proper documentations, forms, data, et cetera, where a lot of owners don't even know they need all that stuff. Sometimes they say that it's overkill with all the paperwork and the details and stuff. So for us, that's just a normal day. We're used to working on that. We're used to doing that. And so it goes back also to the one point I made is, also just as technology is ever evolving, are you staying cutting edge on that technology and evolvement as it goes forward here? Because a lot of these owners have done it the same way for years and years on end, and they've had one full-time manager. They're handling only 150 units in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, you don't need that. So right there, if you want to push the performance, one of the easiest ways we do it is we cut back your expenses. What used to be a really expensive full-time manager is now maybe, hey, I only need to allocate about 10 hours of a property manager to your property. So your performance on the bottom line is already going up. We then come in and implement dynamic pricing, making sure is, hey, we are worried about the competition, but if everybody's full in the market, I don't need to worry about what the next person's rates are. We're going to set the highest rates until somebody tells us no, then we're going to keep going with it. So, it's almost having what the essence of this management is called. It's called third-party management. It's a third-party perspective, because when you're in the weeds of doing the same things at your facility every day, when you're the one that's being the property manager doing all this stuff, you're not seeing the big picture. You're probably not pushing your rates to the highest they can be. You're not doing consistent rent increases in place because you don't want to deal with that customer coming in and complaining to you all the time. So, that's what third-party management can do for you is and these would be a lot of the questions that I would ask, when you're talking to a third-party management company. Are you doing a dynamic pricing model? Are you pushing your rates? How often are you checking your competition here? How often are you doing rent increases to your customers? How often is somebody on your team coming out to check the property, if not having somebody on site daily, depending on your operational status? And are you implementing a lot of new technologies? I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is all of our facilities are completely automated and integrated together, where even if a manager is not there or they're out sick, or I always go with the inclement weather. I mean, we have a crazy snowy day and you can't make it in because, at least that's in St. Louis. Missouri, they're weird about their snow. It snows 1 inch and nobody shows up here. But, can it still run without somebody being there? That's where your performance is going to hit. And honestly, the last thing you need to ask a management company, show me some case studies here. Let me talk to some of your other owners. Let me see if they can truly say, yeah, our performance has done nothing but exponentially grow. And that's why I mentioned previously is you can ask any of our owners, it's continuously doing that, especially at these smaller scale facilities where they haven't had management companies that can perform effectively there. So we're excited to be able to fit that mold for people and, continuing to come in and fix a lot of these, especially these smaller mom and pop operations who only took cash and check for all their life and they write everything down in pen and paper. Okay, how can we streamline it all to a card process and exponentially increase the rent and, still perform like it's our own? That's our motto going forward. Now I'm just talking here. There we go.
Well, so one of the, that is music to my ears, Alex, when we walk out on a site that we're looking to purchase, either we know that they have an interest in selling and, they state that, well, we're 100% full and they're so proud of that, yet their rates are 20 to 25% below the rest of the market. And of course they're full because they've never raised rates. And many times they said, well, we haven't raised rates in 7 years or what have you. And it's a badge of honor. And all we see is opportunity to be able to, increase revenue. So we started this education company for a couple of reasons, because people want to learn, about the business. And we knew that if we elevated the investors, level of knowledge and experience in self-storage, it makes it easier for people to do business. Sometimes it may go against us if they don't know what rate management is, and being able to push that forward, then, either it sometimes is good for us and sometimes it's not so good when we then try to, let them recognize, or for them to see that, well, your facility, just because the one sold down the road for 500,000 doesn't mean that you're going to get 500,000 because, you've got the same amount of units roughly. They've driven their expenses down and they're not over payrolled and they've kept their rates here. So it's not a like kind facility. So, that educating the marketplace, with regards to that is it's a separate business that we created all together, but it also feeds and helps the investment business as well. So
sorry, my mind gets so excited and racing on this stuff. I think it's even funnier when you have, like you said, the badge of honor, our favorite, where they're 100% full and they haven't raised their rents in all these years. Another big point that I'm getting a lot of pushback, especially when we're giving proposals, is, okay, the facility is maybe at 80% full and the rates are $20, $25 less than the rest of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And, we go and visit the site, we see, I'm like, well, this is a really clean site. It's probably mismanaged. It's probably the other way around. Well, that's right there where a management group should be able to push performance, because we will come in and give the proposal to a customer or to a potential buyer. And they'll say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they're 80% full at those rates. Why do you think you can get $25 higher? And the other
Mm-hmm.
comment that I think you probably see a lot of is, well, the reason that they're not more occupied is because their rates are not charging properly. They're not paying attention to their market here, that
Mm-hmm.
all their rates have increased. So now it's going into the good old, I know it gets talked about all the time, the airline model. Do you
Mm-hmm.
want Spirit Airlines or do you want American Airlines? No, I want Delta, or whatever in
Mm-hmm.
the middle. I don't know all the perfect
Mm-hmm.
airlines here, but it's like, so
Mm-hmm.
we've been doing a lot of performance pushing like that, where it's just like, I know we can attain these goals, but a lot of times these newer operators don't know that they can push the rates like this because they
Yeah.
haven't done it before. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, that's where it's one of those things is, if they're saying they believe they can get these rates, then it's probably true. It's probably because they're analyzing their market and knowing, and the current owners are probably scared off half their competition because they don't want to go that cheap, or there's something wrong with it. So sorry, I always feel like I'm like, my mind gets
No, I get
racing
it.
with all this stuff, to say the least. So
Well, typically in the smaller markets, with the smaller competitors, we see the usual tactics, and that is the race to the bottom. Everybody wants to undercut their competition by $1 a unit or $5 a unit. They know what the rates are. They get online and they look at where everybody's priced, or they mystery shop them. And we all know that the first person to the bottom, in the race to the bottom, loses. They go out of business because they've undercut so much that they can't afford to stay in business any longer. And, what we teach our folks is that, in these markets in which there isn't a REIT who understands rate management, because they have to drive value, because they're a REIT and they have to provide value to their shareholders and returns, quarter over quarter. If there's not a REIT in your market that is consistently driving rates and you follow suit, then you have to be comfortable allowing yourself to be that person, to be that REIT in air quotes, meaning somebody has to be driving rates. And so when you come in and you take over a facility, if you do the necessary things that you need to do to turn that facility around from a curb appeal standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from great website accessibility, ease of use to be able to rent and pay rent, and you've got technology in place, well, then you're the premier facility. It doesn't, you don't have to be 3 stories high and, gleaming and shiny. It just means that you're the nicest, cleanest facility in town. And so that gives you the ability to raise rates. And then you contact your competition and let them know that, hey, we're raising rates. You can, if you want to stay below us, that's great, but you don't need to be $10 below us anymore. You only need to be $5, and you're welcome. I just, created this amount of value in your facility. But until the market continues to increase, then you won't have the ability to construct additional units because the rates are too low, or just, make the money and absorb any increases in insurance and property taxes and anything else if everybody is stagnant and staying in that same place. And so, we've felt this need to educate the market in so many instances, and investors as well. So tell me, if you would, Alex, what are some of the other areas as we wrap up here that you feel that, you wish that people were more educated when they got into the business, and how that might help?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that we do, of course, third-party management, the full service management, that's really, we do a ton of that. I think one of the other things that really, I think people are unaware of or just don't know that it's out there, and I kind of wish we had it when we first started way back when, is we do like a transition management type consulting, I guess you could say, where it's, hey, I don't think I need full service management because I really need to get, I think I can do it myself. I think I can do all this. But what I do need is just help setting up systems and processes, getting a good hire in place, making sure that hire understands all the processes and procedures. So we'll come in for 3 or 4 months between, the closing and when it is, it's okay, let me help you implement some rate increases, get standardized processes and procedures in place, get a lot of those systems in place. And that's where, really does, it does wonders for a lot of owners. And then they're able to take it and do it as they will. And then if they realize, and sometimes they do, is, hey, maybe property management makes more sense here, I can't do it myself, then they'll transition back to our program or vice versa. So we want to find the best situation, or I guess that's where I love teaching. I love that aspect of it. That's, why I kind of wanted to get into this management and just that helping others situation here is, I flat out told a few potential clients, I said, I'm not the best fit for you. I want to find that best option for that client and their facility. It may be management, it may be transition management, it may just be, hey, I can give you a few tips here and there as a local friend, friendly competitor like that. But this is going to be what's most feasible for you. And I think some people are almost surprised when I'll tell them that is, I don't think I'm your best option. I'm a bad salesman, Scott. That's what it comes down to here is, but it's going to be finding that best situation for you and your facility. And that's what any of these management groups or consultant type people that you're getting involved with, should be helping you do. It should not be a shoving this down your throat to get this deal done. It should be, let's find you, the best process here. And so that's where we try and do that. And sometimes it is catering some a la carte options, is you just need some help with the management part, but you want to keep the accounting services. Great. You just need some help here. So, we want to be able to assist in any way possible. And that's what we like to be able to say is when any owner approaches us is, I got a solution for you. Do you want to sell? Okay, we also buy. Do you want to, you do like the cash flow, but you don't want to completely get out? Okay, we can help you with management. You want to do development and add more buildings? Great. We've done a few developments and ground up stuff, or you want to sell, but you don't want to sell to me because I'm crazy, whatever. I got you a broker or something like this. I like to be able to go into any situation and having a solution for them in the storage industry. Or maybe it's, I need some continual education. Great. You need to go to Scott Myers, to the academy here, the Self-Storage Academy, and go learn some stuff. So it's having that well-rounded experience to be able to find the best solution for your client or hopefully potential client at that point.
Very well said, Alex. And, we are lifelong learners, students of this industry, and we continue to learn. And as we learn, we pass that along to make those of us that are in the industry, as well as our friendly competitors, even better. So I appreciate you doing that in your efforts as well. And so as we wrap up here, Alex, first of all, how do people find you? What is the best way for people to learn a little bit more about what you do and obviously about your management services?
Erbs Management Group, ERBS, no H. So like herbs and spices without the H or the spices. So Erbs Management Group, so erbsmg.com. So erbsmg.com. Or I do a lot on LinkedIn. I like to be able to connect with people. So Erbs Management Group or Alex Erbs, you can connect with me on there. In Facebook, we do a little bit on Erbs Management Group on there. Otherwise, send me an email. It's alex@erbsmg.com. I love to talk storage. I'm really passionate about it. I'm one of those weird guys that just couldn't talk all day about random topics on storage. So thank you for having me on here for that reason, because we could be here for 3 hours at this point. But yeah, so easy to get a hold of me. All of our contact information is on our website again, or otherwise social media, even though I don't do a ton of it, but please connect with us. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate your time. Looking forward to having you out to our mastermind here very soon. And I'm sure I will be seeing you very soon, either at a facility or at one of the trade shows very soon as well. So with that, thanks again, Alex, for your time. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care. Hey gang, wait, 3 things before you leave. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Self-Storage Podcast and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. Second, be sure to share your favorite episodes and more via Instagram, and don't forget to tag us. And lastly, head to the links in the show description and hit the follow and subscribe button on Twitter and Facebook to get a front row seat as we grow and scale our business and bring you along with us. Take care.